Hello heroes and villains, and welcome to the Build Face channel, helping you build a better turn. My name is Danger Ford, and I'd like to thank you again for watching another one of our videos. So today we've got something really special for you. I am going to go over a couple of decks that I have created with the upcoming Legacy spoilers. I've been testing them, playtesting them against myself for the most part. So, take this with a grain of salt. Also, I don't profess to be anything grand by any means as far as deck building goes. So these aren't end all awesome or anything like that. Mainly I just wanted to see what the new cards can do. So we are going to actually use the Versus mod on Tabletop Simulator courtesy of Ben Rugg. So again, thank you so much for making this, man. This looks amazing. As you can see, we've got some playmats, which is really cool. Let's lock that down actually so it doesn't move. Yes. You can choose from any different playmats. There's Doctor Strange, there's Civil War, very cool. But we'll use the daily metagame mat just because it's nice and clear and concise. So, anyways, we've got all of our counters over here, and then if you wanted to use dice as well, you could use the dice as well. Little dice too to roll. So anyways, I could just sit here and play with all the items all day long. But what we're here for is some deck analysis. So first off, let's start with one of the first decks I made, which is the Thor Combo deck. It's going to take a little while. This is just for the first time, seeing how well my software captures all of this, and we shall see how well this works, really. So first off, I'm going to search the deck just so I can show you guys what we've got in here. So as far as locations go, we've got 2 copies of Sanctum Sanctorum, 2 copies of Avengers Mansion, 4 greens, 4 blues, 4 yellows. So that's actually a bit more than what I usually like to run. I'm one of those guys that doesn't like to run very many locations. So generally I have about 12, which I know is pretty low. 16, that's a pretty decent amount, but it's certainly needed for this deck. Okay, so next up for plot twists, we have 4 copies of Think Again. So an Avengers only plot twist. And then we also have 4 copies of Call, which she is a character, but I'm using her in this instance as a plot twist for her power-up ability. Okay, so moving on, we're actually going to scroll all the way back down to the bottom so that I can just show you them in order of drops. So on turn for turn 1 we have Black Widow, 4 copies of her, Falcon, 4 copies of him, and I'll probably be posting some image overlays so that you can see these cards a little bit more clearly. We've got 4 copies of Agent Peggy Carter, 4 copies of Kane, 4 copies of Jessica Jones, 4 copies of Captain Britain, 3 copies of Doctor Strange, 4 copies of Valkyrie, 3 copies of Ghost Rider, and 2 copies of Nightmare. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's just kind of set up a little mock battle, I suppose, of what I'm trying to go for with each turn-ish, just to give you an idea. So, let's see here, what's the best way of doing this? I suppose what we'll do is we'll actually just set it up like so. And then search for the cards and throw them out. So turn 1, you want to get Falcon. He is definitely the best card to try to draw, so that you can team attack with both Thor and Falcon. which means that he'll get 2 +1/+1 counters when you do that. So just... Nope, not the entire bag. These should all be locked. There we go. That way I can do that. Okay. So yeah, as you can see, 2 +1/+1 counters on him when you team attack with Falcon due to his ability, which is pretty awesome. I know that this probably could be done in a much quicker and more efficient fashion, but honestly I'm also just playing around with Tabletop Simulator and working out the kinks and making sure that everything works properly. So so far it's been excellent. So that's what your first turn would look like. Second turn, you want some Peggy Carter out, and then also hopefully some form of Black Widow for free would be nice. If not, then that's okay, but at least you can start seeing the engine starting to run, I suppose. If you don't have Peggy Carter, hopefully you'll also have Kane, who can come out. Kane is a little bit sacrificial in a way, because according to Thor's level up ability, you want to attack with all of your good characters. So if you got Kane on turn 2, you get that location, whatever it is that you may get, hopefully a blue, so that you could use Thor's level 1 ability. And then you just sacrifice Kane so that you can gain that experience. It's generally the best way of doing that. So, but yeah, you do want, in my opinion, I think you want to just use him and throw him away. If he stuns something, that's great. If he doesn't, then at least if you're hitting your curve, then you should be at 5 experience by the end of this turn, if Falcon survived that first round. Okay, so turn 3, you want Jessica Jones. She's the only 3-drop inside of your deck, but she works great as a big blocker. And also if your opponent has any of those yellow superpower abilities, that also helps. This helps Falcon stay alive. If he's still surviving by this point, you just move him to the back row with his mobile ability. So turn 4, you want to try to get Captain Britain out. And then this is where you use those calls. You use them on Captain Britain so that you can bring out the power-ups, which allows you to get those +3/+3 counters on him, as opposed to +1 due to his ability. You can do it multiple times. If you have multiple copies of Call and Captain Britain in your deck, then he can get super big. And by this time, maybe even by turn 3, if you still had Peggy Carter and you were able to bring out Captain Britain, on turn 3, you would be facing a 7/7 Captain Britain, potentially more. Plus, if you've been utilizing Thor along with Falcon, then he is also upwards to an 8/8 or more level to Thor. And if you've got that green, then he immediately doubles all of those +1/+1 counters. That's just freaking amazing. So by turn 3, you could have a really big board. Alright, so turn 5, you want Doctor Strange to come out. And he is just a great card for all of those yellows that you may have been getting from the locations. This is the first card that uses yellows, or utilizes them, I suppose, and it just helps if the other side is generating all of those counters and you want to change them. So he's also on team, so you could team attack with him. Alright, and then Valkyrie comes out, and if you don't know, then you will know now that Valkyrie is the card that starts the Black Widow Peggy Carter machine gun combo. So basically you have her out if you have 2 copies of Black Widow, one inside your KO pile obviously. Then you would spend the yellow with Valkyrie to continually recruit, KO a Black Widow, and just stun the entire other side of the board with -1/-1 counters. So it's an entire board clear. That's just amazing if you can pull it off, which so far with Thor, it's been hit or miss, but when it does when you do pull it off, it works wonderfully. Okay, so if you've got all of this together, then the rest of this game is kind of just beating a dead horse, really. But you've got Ghost Rider here, who can put more -1/-1 counters on people. He also can team attack with Jessica Jones if you've still got her out, or with Valkyrie if you've got her out. But most of the time I usually keep Valkyrie in the back row because we're using her for her ability, so you want her to survive. So, but Ghost Rider puts those -1/-1 counters on people, and then he does some big damage with his 8/8 attack. And then the final kicker is Nightmare. Oops. So, if by this point you have the Peggy Carter machine gun effect going on, let's exit out of that, then you've got an entire board state that will be stunning on the other side, and you have Nightmare, who says that enemy characters can have and gain -1/-1 counters while stunned. So this is end game. So by turn 8, potentially, well, okay, so by turn 7 actually, if you have all the pieces in place, which is Valkyrie, 2 yellows, or one yellow, 2 copies of Black Widow, Peggy Carter, and Nightmare out, then basically you get to choose how many -1/-1 counters you give to each opponent, and just, I don't know, say 100 or whatever, and then whenever they recover, they immediately stun and continue to keep their counters, which means that it's complete end game scenario. There's no point in continuing on. You've won the game by this point. Good job. So yes, that is the Thor deck. Moving on are a couple mono decks. So I will actually show you, nope, not the Storm deck. We want to do Thanos first. This deck was created. Okay, that was weird. I don't know if you guys saw that. Maybe it was just me while it was loading, but it showed the King of Hearts there. So I was a little confused that wasn't Thanos. Anyways, this deck was created by Adam Logan, and it is basically, hopefully, an anti-Thor deck. So this is obviously using the new Thanos, which means that Court Death stays the same. He has a new level of condition where it's only when enemy characters get KOs as opposed to both sides. And then his level 2 Infinity Gauntlet is somewhat similar, except I believe you discard a random card and you KO one of the resources, KO a supporting character, and stun the main character. So it's still super powerful. Honestly, though, with this deck, if you get it off, if you get the Infinity Gauntlet off, then, you know, more power to you. But otherwise, it's kind of just like Nightmare. It's beating the dead horse by that point. If you're up on that, then you're more likely than not going to win your match anyways. But anyways, let's go into the deck, and I will show you what we have here. So as far as locations go, it's kind of scattered around, but we have 4 vaults we have 4 greens, 4 yellows, 4 blues, and 4 reds. So 4 copies of every single basic location and wild location that you can have. That just helps Thanos facilitate his. That just helps Thanos facilitate his level up condition. So onward, we have 4 copies of Shock to the System. We have 3 copies of Trickster God, 2 copies of Metal and Fire, and then 4 copies of Steel and Flame, the new loyalty card. So yes, this is a mono deck. Going into the characters, so we have 4 copies of Crossbones, 3 copies of Mystique, 4 copies of Ronan, 2 copies of Dr. Octopus, 4 copies of Green Goblin, 4 copies of Sabretooth, 3 copies of Mr. Sinister, 2 copies of Juggernaut, and 1 copy of Dormammu. So, obviously turn 1, it's a straight up curve deck, so nothing should be too surprising for you here. Turn 1, you want to get Crossbones out. He immediately gives himself a +1/+1 counter. Turn 2, Mystique is nice to have, but I think that Ronan is a little bit better in this circumstance. Although Ronan is kind of a tech card in this way, he is super nice late game when you want something to trigger. Like maybe you want your Court Death Thanos with all of his +1/+1 counters to go through. So a nice thing to do late game is to use, let's see here, to use Ronan to take out, well, we'll just say Thor, since like I said, this is supposedly the Anti-Thor deck. So you use Ronan to call out Think Again, so that you can take all of those out of your opponent's hand, and then you can use Thanos and Crossbones to team attack. Hopefully both of them are pretty beefy by that point, and then if they have any other plot twists available other than the Think Again, then I suppose you wouldn't even need Ronan in that circumstance, since Crossbones would do it himself, since he's got Combat Master. But either way, there's a couple different ways that can either make you discard or not be able to use Think Again, so that your attack goes through. Okay, so turn 3, Green Goblin is actually the best card for turn 3, with his putting -1/-1 counters on each character in a row. This, along with Steel and Flame, let's put it in its proper place, are really great. Steel and Flame gives each enemy supporting character 2 -1/-1 counters, and then Green Goblin puts yet another -1/-1 counter onto each enemy in a particular row. So -3/-3 is incredibly powerful, guys. So that's almost like well, I mean, it is a better shock to the system. It sticks. It stops a lot of characters like Punisher on turn 5, who has only 3 defense. It takes out a bunch of small swarm characters. So really effective. And then turn 4, we've got Sabretooth with his Ferocious and Berserker. He works out really well in this deck whenever you finally get out Mr. Sinister, who I think is one of the coolest cards in the new Legacy set. You spend the blue, you give Sabretooth over here another instance of Berserker, so now he's getting 2 +1/+1 counters every single time he attacks. So that's pretty awesome. There we go. And you know, if you keep having the blues, you can keep doing it over and over and over and over and over again. Probably won't happen that many times, but you get the idea. You can have 3 instances of Berserker on a ferocious Sabretooth. That makes him incredibly powerful. Okay, so turn 6, you get Juggernaut out, who works out really well if you've got some characters who are trying to protect their back row. So all you need to do is spend that green and then solo attack with Juggernaut. Again, you can do shenanigans with Mr. Sinister to make Juggernaut more effective, maybe give him lethal. That's probably the best one. Or, you know, Berserker also works for him, and Ferocious also works for him since he's got such a big attack. So, and then last but not least, you have Dormammu, who is just a decent 7-drop. He doesn't have that much attack value as far as the 7-drop goes when you're looking at characters like Adam Warlock, but he does have Immortal, which means that you only need 1 copy of him in your deck. That's super nice since he'll just shuffle back into your deck once he's KO'd. If you do have the yellow and blue to spare, you can put a character from an enemy player's KO pile onto your side. That's also really effective, especially because this is a mono deck. It doesn't mean that you can't still use Steel and Flame because that card didn't come from your deck. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, you know, as far as what I've done with the playtesting goes, if you can trigger Infinity Gauntlet, more power to you. But more often than not, I'm using those cards to Ronan's ability. I'm using it definitely for Mr. Sinister. There's not too many characters out here, honestly, that do have superpowers, but the ones that do are really effective. Mystique's another one that works really well early game. So, anyways, that is the Thanos deck. Okay, so the last one that I would like to show you is the Storm mono deck. This one's pretty exciting too. Okay. So, Storm mono. We'll go through this real quick. We've got 4 copies of blues, 4 copies of reds, 4 copies of School for Gifted Youngsters. Those are the only locations I'm running in this. Again, like I mentioned, I like to go pretty low on the locations if I can. Another thing that I like to do with my decks is I look for synergies within the superpowers. So if there's a character in particular that shares one with my MC, then I'm more likely to take them. It might seem a little, I think the word is tautological to, you know, have 2 characters that, you know, require the same location to use their powers. But what that means to me is that I can run less of them, less of those locations. And while there are some times where I might have a hard decision to make, it means that hopefully I'll be more effective because I won't be getting some empty basic locations that don't work for anybody until a certain character comes out. So yeah, 12 copies of locations there. As far as plot twists go, we have Gifted and Talented, the new loyalty card for them. We have 4 copies of those. We have, let's see here, 4 copies of Loyal Soldiers, 3 copies of X Factor, 3 copies of Squad Tactics, and 3 copies of Uncanny Defense. A lot of plot twists in this deck. That's something that I also don't normally have very often. I might switch this up a little bit. It depends. I'm still kind of tweaking this one quite a bit. The Loyal Soldiers is definitely a good addition since it's a mono deck. I actually thought about also putting this into the Thanos build, but I wanted to use Adam Logan's suggestion of what to run with that first before I start tweaking it any. So Squad Tactics is maybe the one card that hasn't really, or no, I'm sorry, not Squad Tactics. Uncanny Defense is maybe the one card that I haven't really utilized all too much. It does help, but it's kind of situational. It just depends on who you want to keep alive. Mainly your hope in this deck, or characters that help hope out. So anyways, let's get into the supporting characters. So there's 4 copies of Iceman, 4 copies of Hope, 4 copies of Cyclops. Let's see here, where's the 3 drops? Here we go, 4 copies of Psylocke. Oh, I missed it, 1 drop, so 4 copies of Shadowcat for 1. But she is not going to be recruited from your, or on your resource. She won't be recruited in your recruit step. She most likely, well, all the time actually, you want to recruit her from your hand. So we'll get more into that once I get into the strategy of this deck. So where was I? 4 copies of Psylocke, and then we have 4 copies of Beast, 3 copies of Wolverine, 2 copies of Emma Frost, and 2 copies of Professor X. So yeah, if you noticed, there is red here with Cyclops, there is blue with Shadowcat, and otherwise, oh, and then also some yellow with Professor X. So yeah, predominantly blue and red. So hence these cards. Professor X, yeah, the only cards that he will be able to utilize is these wild cards, and with that in mind, I might actually take him out, but I did want to see what I could do with him. Throughout my playtests, I've noticed that he doesn't really come out. Even on turn 7, a lot of the times I'd rather bring out a combination of some of the other cards, so he's one of those up in the air cards for me. But anyways, so with this deck, it's all about stalling, it's all about getting these characters out and drawing tons of cards. So a couple combos that I'd like to show you. First off, you'd want to bring Iceman out on turn 1, and then on your opponent's turn 1, if you have the blue, spend that to bring out Shadowcat, and most likely they're attacking your front row Storm. So Shadowcat's going to come out, Storm's going to gain the XP from activating a superpower, and you're going to get that Think Again type cancel the combat ability from Shadowcat. Okay. Turn 2, you want Cyclops out. Another good thing about this deck is it's got a lot of range to it, which I didn't realize that the X-Men had at first. I just haven't really played with them that much, but it works out really well. So Cyclops comes out, he's great for the leader ability. He also has that battle tactics superpower, which even if you don't need to use it in a strategic fashion, or a tactical fashion, I suppose, the strategic play is if you have the red, spend it so that you can level up Storm even quicker. By this point, hopefully you have a Hope Summers out that you can use with conjunction with Shadowcat to bring out yet another cancel effect. And then also, if you've got Iceman out, you're freezing one of their characters again. So you can see, like, their side, they may be getting some characters on the board. You may not be big enough just yet to take anything out, but at least you're freezing those big guns that are coming out early game. And then not only that, but you've got all of these back row characters who can team attack, and then Cyclops uses his leader ability, and it's really effective that way. Okay, and then turn 3, we get Psylocke out, which she's working really well in this deck. I really like her. The discard ability is surprisingly really effective. Not only that, but if you have Hope out, then you can potentially make your opponent discard 2 cards a turn. That's so freaking effective and just debilitating for your opponent. I've always liked mill abilities, either on your side or on the other side. It's just it works really well. Okay, and then so Beast on turn 4. Beast is great if you haven't used up those reds for Cyclops. You know, Beast can go into the front row, use his ferocious to attack and hopefully stun somebody, and then get moved to the back row so that he's nice and protected by using Cyclops' ability. And then if both Hope and Beast are face up at the beginning of your turn, you're drawing 2 cards, and then your normal 2 cards, and then don't forget you've got Gifted and Talented as well, which lets you draw yet another 2 cards during your build phase. There's been a couple playthroughs where I have been able to draw up to 6 or 8 cards just from Genius and Hope shenanigans, plus 2 Gifted and Talenteds, plus, you know, my regular draw phase, which is amazing. So, alright, and then turn 5, you get your Wolverine out. He's just effective all the time with his Berserker, and then also with regeneration. So not only that, but he affects Hope again. So you can get this ranged Berserker Hope who can, if you've still got Psylocke out, be making you discard cards. You can see there's a lot of really effective combos in this deck that I didn't think would be that great at first, but it's actually working out really well. And then turn 6, you've got Emma Frost. You either use it on yourself, but more likely on your opponent. She's not really that effective, you know, coming in this late in the game as far as discarding your hand. If you're looking for something in particular, maybe like an X Factor or something like that, then she can be really effective on yourself. Otherwise, it's just nice because she's got, yet again, some ranged and can attack from the back row. And then, as I mentioned before, we have, where is he? Professor X to top it all off, who, again, he's alright. You know, you've got 4 copies of Wilds to use if you can utilize his ability. If not, then he is yet again another ranged attacker late game. So you can see, even though this is a curve, hopefully you're getting tons of characters out, and then you're also making the other side debilitated with all of your freeze effects and discard effects, and you're also just drawing more cards so you have more answers. This Storm deck is actually surprisingly really well. It's kind of weird that I don't really use Storm's abilities all too much in this deck, although they have been utilized. So maybe Storm isn't the greatest card for this kind of build. I noticed all the ranged attacking, and I really liked the idea of having her flight with 5 defense, and it's not too hard to actually get her to level up now when you've got so many different options to use and all these combos. Hope is really the most effective card in this deck. She is definitely the MVP. So anyways, that is your first look at the Tabletop Simulator mod, and I hope you enjoyed the deck analysis. If you've got any ideas on how to tweak these or make them better, or you know, if I'm just seeing some really glaring issue in any of these decks, you know, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm always theory crafting, so I would appreciate any sort of input that you have. Otherwise, you know, thanks for watching the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. You know, spread the word. This community is always looking to grow. I think that the Legacy set is going to shift this game into a different meta, hopefully for the better, something that's really healthy and just very diverse. So, yeah, you've been watching the Build Phase channel. My name is Danger Ford. Have a good week.